And it took about a good year before we started putting the puzzle pieces together and to build a program. So, and have our audit completed.
So you think that would be like if you were to suggest to other companies maybe that don't have one at all and they're looking at this, I mean, you said it's a lot of work. If you're looking at this project and you're like, oh my gosh, would a good suggestion to them be split it all up into different sections and hand it off?
Take the protocols from IS-BAO or BAS and split it up within those sections and assign each of those different protocols to different people and have them complete those tasks. Otherwise, it's just too much for one person.
Sure.
It could be done by that small one airplane flight department with 2 people. It takes a lot of extra work.
Some dedication. I like that you mentioned BASC as well, because there are 2 programs out there that are doing audits, BASC and ISBAO. At least those are the only 2 that I know of. And if I'm not mistaken, the BASC program almost caters to a smaller flight department a bit more than the ISBAO.
I think the protocols are pretty much the same.
Hello, and welcome to the Business Aviation Collective podcast, sponsored by LD Aviation. I'm your host, Lindsay, and today we get a chance to talk to Steve Golden and Dave Parker, both who are with Chick-fil-A. And in their previous lives before Chick-fil-A, they both came from Darden. So we're going to hear all about how this dynamic duo kind of worked on 2 different flight departments and made them both spectacular. So thank you guys very much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Looking forward to it. Oh, okay. See what you did there.
Well, cool. Well, Steve, let's start out with you. I always ask everybody, how did you even get into aviation? So can you tell us, is this a lifelong dream or how did that happen?
It sort of was. Where I grew up in upstate New York, a little dairy town, where our counselors didn't really know anything about corporate aviation. So I went to them and built my own shadow program and went to Rochester Airport and ended up shadowing Xerox flight department up there. While I was up there, watched the maintenance side of it. So I got interested in electronics, avionics side of it. So I applied to go to Spartan School of Aeronautics to go to the avionics side and A&P side. And we were pushed into getting at least our private pilot license. And during that time, I got addicted to flying and switched from the maintenance side over to the flying side.
Right.
So from there, I graduated Spartan with most of everything but my instructor ratings. And I transferred to Delaware State College in Dover, Delaware to fly on their NIFA team. We couldn't have our instructor rating to do that. So for 2 years that I was there to finish my degree, I competed in NIFA competitions for the school. And
NIFA, okay, is that the ones where you're kind of flying and you're dropping the sandbags to aim for the X's on the runways? Okay.
Yep. Spot landings. We had a balloon drop type thing. We had cross-country skills that we had to do with the other colleges that we went to. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I instructed for the college for a couple of years, my junior and senior year. And then my senior year, I got a job flying charter up in Wisconsin. So flying King Airs and Twin Cessnas up there. I was up there for about 7 years doing that. Came back to the East Coast of Maryland to start up Purdue Farms Flight Department out in Salisbury, Maryland. Yeah. I did that for about 3 years, and we demonstrated a Beechjet with Raytheon Aircraft Company. During that time, I knew that Purdue Farms was pretty much going to be east of the Mississippi. That's all the flight department was going to do, and I wanted to see more in aviation. So I applied to the flight demonstration department at Raytheon and got hired with them. Was a demo pilot for about 4 years, and that's where I met Dave during that time. His company bought a Hawker. From that point on, Raytheon was kind of going through some financial troubles, and Darden Restaurants down in Orlando, Florida had bought a Hawker and was looking for pilots. Mm-hmm. So I applied down there and got hired on with Darden Aviation, and that's where Dave was working at the time.
Excellent. Okay, so Steve, I'm going to stop you there. Then I'm going to switch over to Dave because I want to talk about you guys be able to talk about together Darden and stuff. So Dave, similar question. How did you get into aviation?
Not as exciting as Steve, but used to play football in high school, and I was in a group called Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Mm-hmm. And we used to have a guest speaker before every football game come and speak to the group. And it happened to be a colonel from Deal Air Force Base flying F-16s. And I was always fascinated by aviation and flying, but was never able to do it because of my interest in sports. So I never had the time for it. And I knew that my abilities in football aren't going to be past high school. So I guess the colonel could sense that I was interested in aviation, so he kind of asked me what I was going to do. And it was my junior year. I wasn't really sure. And he suggested I go look at Embry-Riddle at Daytona Beach. So that summer, my father and I went to Daytona Beach, did the campus tour, signed up to go to college here, got all my ratings, and had a career path to take with either military or flight instruction at the time. And I chose flight instruction. So I did that for about 2.5 years, where I met a gentleman before I got my first corporate job. He had a citation. Every 2 years, I got a new airplane, ended up into a beach jet, and they were an egg supplier for public supermarkets.
I know, interesting.
And it was a family-owned business, and they owned a bunch of banks in South Georgia. So I did that for about 10 years, and then that's where I was able to do a contract trip for Darden in Orlando, which I knew that the family business, someday that was going to end.
Sure.
Once the principals, and it was passed down to the kids, the airplanes, it probably wouldn't last. So I did a contract trip at Darden, and that's where I met, actually go back. Like Steve said, on one of the airplanes that we got at the job flying the egg supplier, is where I met Steve in Wichita. We were getting typed in the Hawker. And after I got typed, I was able to do a contract trip at Darden, and they hired me on full time.
Okay.
And that was back in 2000. So that's where I met Steve.
Yep.
That's awesome. So you guys both were 13, 14 years there with Darden.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Because it sounds like you guys really did some radical changes there.
Yeah. We were the first, I think we were the top 5 to become IS-BAO, the International Standard for Business Aircraft Operators. We jumped on that bandwagon right away with it. And it was a great experience. It really got the team morale together within the department. None of us knew what it was about, but we all kind of took bits and pieces of it and spent about a year building it. So we did that. We were stage 3 for 9 years with that department.
Wow, stage 3 for 9 years. That's a big accomplishment.
It was. We had a good time doing it, and I felt like we were one of those companies that other companies would benchmark against.
Yeah.
So we'd get a lot of companies come down to tour us and spend some time with us to see how we built the platform to become stage 3 that long and how it worked. We had 2 airplanes. Well, one time we had 3 airplanes, 2 Citation Sovereigns and 1, what was that thing, a Bravo?
Yes,
that was a Citation Bravo. 9, 10 pilots, 4 mechanics, scheduler.
1 scheduler.
Yeah.
You were the backup scheduler.
Yeah.
And then I learned how to do the scheduling. I was the only pilot that knew how to do the scheduling. So it was either our scheduler, Steve, or myself that would build and do all the trips.
That is a team. Okay, can I go back quick to the IS-BAO piece of it? Do you guys remember how you even found out about it? How did you realize that was a program? And
it was the director prior to Steve, his name was Hugh Hardy, actually handed me an Aviation International magazine.
Yeah.
They used to ship it or send it to all the pilots every month.
Yep.
And he threw it at me and said, "What do you think about this?" And so I started reading the article and noticed that there was a lot of work to be involved in doing that. And it was too big for one person. So I went to Steve and said, I think it's a great opportunity, but I can't do it by myself. So Steve came up with the idea of giving everybody within the department, the time I think we had 9 pilots.
Yeah.
One person had training, split safety up into ground and air safety. What else do we have?
The emergency response plan, the safety management, the FRAT side of it. And it was more of a get everybody together and learn what you can on this.
Because we were all learning it at
the time. None of us really understood what it was about or how it would work and fit into a department. Fortunately, at that time, it was a pretty solid department. We had pretty good working flight operations manual, pretty good SOPs. So a lot of the stuff that we just had to fine tune to follow the protocols within IS-BAO.
And put it all in as one.
Yeah, put it all in as one. Yeah, it was
all over the place.
But I looked at it as a team building exercise, and it just really exploded from there. We all just came together once a month and just would talk about our different sections of what we're learning about it. And it took about a good year before we started putting the puzzle pieces together and to build a program. So, and have our audit completed.
So you think that would be like if you were to suggest to other companies maybe that don't have one at all and they're looking at this, I mean, you said it is a lot of work. If you're looking at this project and you're like, oh my gosh, would a good suggestion to them be split it all up into different sections and hand it off?
Take the protocols from IS-BAO or BAS and split it up within those sections and assign each of those different protocols to different people and have them complete those tasks. Otherwise, it's just too much for one person.
Sure.
It could be done by that small one airplane flight department with two people. It takes a lot of extra work.
Some dedication. I like that you mentioned BASC as well, because there are two programs out there that are doing audits, BASC and ISBAO. At least those are the only two that I know of. And if I'm not mistaken, the BASC program almost caters to a smaller flight department a bit more than the ISBAO.
I think the protocols are pretty much the same. With BASC, we have switched from ISBAO. We got ISBAO stage 1 when I first got here. We're now about ready to get our face-to-face audit for BASC to be IEP 3.
Okay.
Registered with them. The biggest difference I see between the two is BASC it's a consortium of all the operators together, and we kind of help each other out throughout the process of building our safe flight departments. ISBAO is more of a very rigid checklist. This is what you need. This is best practices. We come in, we look at your whole department, and you're either doing it or you're not. We write it up and go away and then come back. BASC is, again, it's a consortium of people, and they work with you to help develop the best practices. And not all of them work for every company. I mean, there's things that, you say maybe Coca-Cola or Home Depot does, or totally different flight department that works for them that doesn't work for us. Sure. But yeah, we're all part of that group.
And BASC is more self-auditing. So the first 3 IEPs are a self-audit that you send in. And then they give you recommendations of how to be compliant if you're not. Whereas ISBAO, they come in and do the audit, and if you're non-compliant, then you have to have so many days, depending on how non-compliant you are, to correct it.
Okay.
So it's kind of nice that it's self-auditing, and then it's overseen, if you what you call a gatekeeper, to make sure.
Yeah, we're doing what we said we did.
You know what you're saying you are, and then if you're not, then he will give you suggestions from all the other companies, what they're doing.
That's great.
Like
a giant benchmark.
Exactly.
It is. Yep.
And then he comes in at the end. So like Steve said, we have ours this year. And he does a face-to-face and goes through all of them together.
Okay.
So
interesting. That is so cool. We have, with our clients, we have done ISBAO audits and we've done BASC audits and stuff. And so, yeah, we've been through both of them. But I think you're right. Each one has their niche in this industry to who it's, best suited towards.
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So let's go back to Darden. So you went in, you got your ISBAO stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. You did that for 9 years. What other cool things did you guys implement over there?
Well, one thing that I think that came out of the whole ISBAO stuff is once you get to that level 3, our third one, we're like, what's next? What can we do next? So we don't want to be complacent and just stay where we're at. We took the gentleman that was in charge of training, kind of started looking at it from the outside. So we started getting ASAP reports and our hit forms that we were taking and built those into scenarios that we went training with. So we do a 6158 once a year. And then we were based in Orlando, so it was pretty easy with flight safety being on the field. And then at the 6-month mark, we'd go in and just dry lease the sim and do what they call 6157 and just built a scenario around something that had happened maybe with the other crew with a flat failure or I don't know, an engine spool down over the Rockies, just some type of ASAP report that we got from either us or NetJets. We had a connection at NetJets at the time to get some different scenarios with it. So we kind of took our training up to the next level on that side of it and made it scenario based, where there was no fault of the pilots. It was more of how did that crew handle that situation? And each crew did the same thing at that point. And then we all got together and kind of talked about the training. Why did you decide when you had the emergency to do this? Why did you decide to do that? And again, there was no fault of the crew. They could have made as many mistakes as possible or what they want to do. And there was no faults on the training side of it. So I think that came out of it.
And remember, too, was during the protocols, every 2 years, you have to do AED, fire extinguisher training.
Okay.
So we used to have FACs come in, and they will do a 2-day course where you get all those certifications and all those sign-offs for IS-BAO or BAS within those 2 days. So we did that for the first couple cycles, and to keep it fresh, we decided we were going to start doing it in the house. And to keep that team building mentality that we started IS-BAO with, we thought, well, what better way of getting a raft that's expired, taking it out on Steve's boat to the Banana River, and actually see if we can, they tell you how to do it, but you never put one to an airplane, or in this case, a boat, to see how they actually operate.
Cool.
So we did that one time, we found out that it's not as easy.
Yeah.
Not as easy as it sounds. We hooked it up to Steve's boat, inflated it, and it inflated inside the boat.
Started.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to kick it out. And then once we all jumped onto the raft, it became a free for all. We started
playing King of the Raft.
King of the Raft.
That's great. I bet that was a great team building exercise.
Well, yeah, then the Coast Guard flew over.
Yeah, it was very the Sally Rafter. Yeah, I think it turned into a pretty good show.
And a great story, because we had the Coast Guard over top of our raft. We were doing an exercise, and they were trying to figure out if we were serious.
Oh my gosh! So could you feel the helicopter and the wind?
And they saw us throwing each other off the raft, and they soon found out that we were not in distress.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So note to self for anybody else who's going to try that. Maybe give the Coast Guards a heads up that you're going to do that.
And make sure you throw the raft out before it starts deploying.
Okay. Nothing.
Because otherwise it'll happen on the boat. Or
Oh
it's your
my God.
plane.
Yeah, so I think we learned early with the IS-BAO process that it's more of an educational process, but it's also a good morale team building process if you use it right. There is a lot of extra work that the team has to do, but it really brought us close together with Darden. Everyone had a buy-in with it, and I think we didn't see that side of it coming out on the morale builder that it was every year, the extra training and stuff we did, but it paid off.
And then we know that every 2 years, which extended once you, for stage 3, it could go to 3 years. But we knew the audits were coming. So we knew that we would be working together to accomplish. So,
Okay. Oh, that's so great. I don't think I've ever heard of IS-BAO as being associated with team morale building. Because most of the time everybody's like, oh my gosh, I got to do all this extra work and everything. But I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. If you take it as, we're working together on it, you get out of it what you put into it. So
one guy that was never allowed back on the raft was the guy that nobody ever wanted to fly with.
Yeah.
Someone to fly with him? Yeah, keep him off the raft too.
Yeah, he wasn't allowed under.
Oh my gosh. I want to go back to something that I think, Steve, you might have said, and it was the ASAP program. So we talk about that just a very little bit, but there's a lot of corporate flight departments who do not participate. But could you tell us what that program was kind of about? What does it do? And for those people that are listening that don't really know what it's about.
Well, what we used it for is it's more of a voluntary self-disclosure of a mistake that you may have made. In our department, the just culture that we built, as long as it wasn't a willful misconduct, we encouraged everybody to report their mistakes so we could learn from them. And, you weren't going to be, fired. Everyone's worried about their job. As long as it wasn't a willful misconduct. And so we would take, and it grew to the next level. The crew would take these reports that we would get. They were all ID identified. So it didn't matter if it was a Citation 10 or a 737 or what it was. We just wanted the scenario that it happened in. And then we would build that around our airplane, the Sauber. So, for example, there was one that sticks to my mind is taken off out of Tahoe Airport, short runway, high altitude, and coming back to Florida. And we had just a simple flap wouldn't retract failure on it. And all of a sudden now the crew and the weather wasn't good enough to come back into Tahoe. So the crew has to look at altitude that you can fly with partial flaps down. You had to look if you had enough fuel to get where you wanted to go. Is it a severe emergency enough to where we got to go somewhere else to get it fixed and all that? And to watch the thinking process of the different crews of what they did. And again, there's no right or wrong answer on this now. There's structural limits and stuff that everyone has to follow, but just to learn how the different crew were thinking on this process. And that kind of led into another team building thing that we did was personality traits. We spent a couple of days on that with the team to learn how each other think and process things. You got your type A personalities, you've got your thinkers, you've got your, ESTJs. I think we used the Berkman or DISC or something. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I've heard of Berkman and Hogan and a couple of them.
So, again, this another indirect cause of the IS-BAO was one, why did the crew think this way? Well, let's get everybody together with an instructor and figure out how everybody thinks. So that led into another team building experience. Now I know when I ask Joey Bag of Donuts a question and he just looks at me with a deer headlight like that, he's a processor. And it may take him a minute. Oh, okay. With that. So that was kind of another indirect learning environment that we had with doing these ASAPs and training lines.
Yeah. I love that personality that you guys did, everybody's personality, because it really gives you insight, not only to your team members, but to yourself as well.
Oh, so exactly.
You can look at, okay, well, I know when so-and-so talks to me in a certain way or gives me a project in a certain way, this is how I'm going to feel about it or work on it.
Yeah.
And you can give people a heads up.
It paid dividends for me personally, communicating with my wife, communicating with my kids.
Yes.
Communicating with me.
Communicating with them.
Yep. In fact, my daughter just did the Berkman on a totally side note, but she just did the Berkman. She's 17 and heading to college next year. And I think that it brought out a lot of ideas of what her personality is like. So it's going to help her kind of steer to what type of a job might be really well suited for her. I think they're great.
Yeah, to know your strengths and weaknesses, especially going into something like that. And I've been shocked throughout the years. I've been in this business for almost 30 years now, how very little it's changed from when I first took it to where we recently took it with my leadership team that I answered to. And it's very little of it has changed on it.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Yep. That you get to a certain age and you're pretty much the same type of person for the long
time. I am.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So you guys did, 13, 14 years at Darden. And then we heard that, I don't know the history of Darden, but it sounds like it closed pretty abruptly.
Yeah. Hostile takeover of the board.
Wow.
Chopped up the company, laid a department off for, I think, almost 40 years that we had an aviation department. But that publicly traded company, and those are some of the risks that you take.
Right. Yeah. I hate to see that happen to a flight department, but you're right.
Yep.
Can change quick. Okay. So then where did each of you guys go then afterwards?
I ended up as a drug dealer filing for a pharmaceutical company.
Up
in Illinois. Yeah. I've spent a couple of years up in Illinois flying for a pharmaceutical company up there. And then I got recruited for Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
And basically was told by the kids that were born and raised in Florida and now living in Wisconsin, not to mess it up, that they wanted to get back to warmer weather.
I was going to ask you about that, Steve, because, so you came from the Northeast, so cold weather, then moved to Wisconsin, then down to Florida. It's hard to go back from a nice warm temperature back up to the cold. I'm from Minnesota originally, so I know what Wisconsin's like.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd go back to Florida.
Dave went to Florida to
New York.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Upstate New York.
Okay, so a ton of snow.
You for Corning Incorporated, yes. And one winter, in a 2-hour period, we had 24 inches of snow.
Gosh.
And one day I de-iced 3 times in one day, and
Yeah.
steam cold.
Yep. So I got
Like,
the position here at Chick-fil-A. They were struggling with their flight department, and they had a couple of changes in their management, and they knew what my record was at Darden, what I did with Darden. Came in here, and it's Chick-fil-A is a difficult company to interview with. It was about 3 to 4 months of interviews, and I think it was at least 6 interviews that we had, and that is normal for Chick-fil-A. They've got a 95% retention rate with the company, so they want to be sure that not only do they have the right person, is that person realizes the culture that they're coming into. It's a very unique company, privately held, Christian-based company. So when I was offered the position here, we needed some pilots right away. I needed a maintenance manager. So I went back to Dave and asked him if he wanted to come back and work with me here at Chick-fil-A for what we did at Darden. And he was on board with it. And our maintenance manager that we had at Darden was working at the Citation Service Center at the time. And he elected to come back and work with me here at Chick-fil-A to help me turn this place around.
Yeah.
nice.
I have one stipulation, though. We had to become IS-BAO certified.
I think that sounds like a good stipulation. So you guys, Chick-fil-A was not ISBAO prior to you guys getting there.
They barely have enough FOM.
Yeah, barely had an FOM, and they had 2 airplanes and really 2 full-time pilots, and it needed a lot of structure involved in it. So
yeah, the team to bring in then,
Yeah.
It was. I imagine it probably was hard, perhaps rough in the beginning. I mean, that seems like it always is when new people come in, and especially if your culture's a little bit off.
yeah, it was very difficult. There's some legacy people here that have been here a while, and here's 3 new people coming in that they don't know, and
They were all airline.
yeah, they were all ex-airline.
Mhm.
So there were some challenges there in it, but we spent the last probably 5 years it took to kind of turn this around again. What we wanted to build here between the 3 of us was, again, a flight department that was benchmarked against. So I didn't want to just do BASC or do IS-BAO. I wanted us to be a presence in the corporate aviation and corporate aviation arena anyway. And I think we've finally got over that hump, and we're on our way to do that.
And I kind of want to point out one thing about the scheduler dispatcher section. So we were able to help you guys out in a short-term period, but can you tell us about your scheduler that you had now? Because you took a chance on somebody who didn't have aviation background, and it really worked for you guys. And I think that's an example of maybe the Chick-fil-A culture in general. I thought maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah,
a bit.
absolutely. So we had some changes here at the hangar, and we needed a scheduler, and I needed a scheduler like right away. So that's when I was introduced to you. You so graciously stepped in and saved me for well over a year, helping me because I still had a department to run, and I was without a scheduler. So I was doing scheduling, flying, and running the department and hiring people on top of that as we were growing. So we interviewed a lot of different people, those with a dispatching license background, those with a scheduling background, and those with no aviation background at all. And I kept going back to Amanda that she worked with us as a contractor, and she kind of understood the culture of Chick-fil-A, which is very different. So that was one of her big strengths. And she understood the chaos of working with the C-suite admins. They're the executive admins, and how the schedule was very dynamic. And I saw what she did. She used to schedule interviews for the executive admins. A lot of changes, a lot going on in that arena.
Mm-hmm.
But her attitude and her just the calm that she brought in to all that, I knew that I could teach aviation. I couldn't teach the calmness of the chaos at the time.
Sure.
And I couldn't teach the relationship with the admins. And to me, the relationship with the admins is 90% of this. If I brought someone in from the outside and they didn't get along with the admins, I was in big trouble. And not only for years down the road with that. So we brought Amanda in, couldn't spell aviation. And on top of that, she was 7 months pregnant.
That's right. So you took a chance on multiple fronts there.
Took a chance on all that. But I knew I had hired the right person with her personality traits and which she, again, the hard process it was with Chick-fil-A, it was at least 5 interviews that she had with them. So everybody liked her. I liked her. So I took the chance on that. She was with me for a couple of months and she kind of started learning a little bit about the scheduling software and working with you and Lori with LD Aviation. Went on maternity leave, came back, and then she hit it full throttle. And again, thanks to you guys being able to step in and train her.
Yeah.
And knowing the expertise that you bring, knowing different software was huge. And being experts on tripplanning.biz that we use, I could finally step back and start running the department again and letting her go with that. And we've spent the last year or so teaching her about corporate aviation, the technical stuff, the winter operations with getting hangars and de-icing, just runway distances, lengths, and things like that she needs to know. And so at the time, it was probably 90% LD Aviation, 10% Amanda. In about 6 months, it was about 50-50. And now I feel like it's kind of turned the pendulum where she's 90% Amanda, 10%. We use LD Aviation now for a lot of the administrative stuff, where she's finally making the decisions on the trips and stuff like that. But still on the background, again, goes back to the quality of life. She still gets phone calls 8:00 at night, on weekends and things like that. But she's got the ability to turn that off and run her life. And we got LD Aviation working in the background to help cover that.
Yeah.
And I went out on a whim too with her. And she doesn't have an office at the hangar. Her office is embedded with the executive admins.
That is unique. That's great.
I feel unique. Our customers are the executive admins. And once you needed to build up that professional and personal relationship with them, and then she's always there when they have immediate questions. So it's not this email string going back and forth, even though she still gets a lot of that. She's able to be right there when they need an answer and be able to do things.
That's cool.
Yeah, Dave worked with her for probably 3 or 4 months alone just to get her spooled up on the aviation side of it. And what's great about Amanda is she realizes her strengths and weaknesses. She's not afraid to admit when she needs help or makes a mistake. And now she's at the point where she wants to get her dispatcher's license.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so she's taking the next step now. She's signed up to get that. So over the next few months, she's going to work on getting a dispatch license.
But think about it, too, that she's only been doing it. September was a year.
Yeah, September was a year.
Yeah.
So she's only been doing it not even a year and a half, and she's already gone from not doing anything to being able to get her going for her dispatcher license.
That is so cool. And I know you guys have afforded her the chance to go to MBAA base in Vegas. And I think she's going to be going to maybe schedulers and dispatchers as well in March. So you really have given her a lot of opportunities. We talk a lot about trying to get more people into the industry. And I don't think we talk about this pathway very often. But I think a pathway of finding the right candidate and teaching them aviation is, we've done it at LD Aviation as well. It's completely a valid pathway to bring people into aviation and see them flourish.
Well, Chick-fil-A's culture is very relation-based. They're based on the face-to-face relationship, the personal touches. So again, I knew Amanda had that, and that's what I needed for the Chick-fil-A culture, and that we could teach her the other side of it. Have, all the other staff members, the pilots, they understood when she came in here to, look over her shoulder, double check the catering, double check the rental cars, double check the airports and things like that to help her out. And again, that's the morale that I think that Dave and I have built here with it, is that it's not my department, it's not his department, it's our department. And we're all here together to make this look good. And they make Amanda look good, she makes them look good, and we're all happy.
That is like a really great culture. Any additional tips on maybe how, if somebody's in a flight department and they'd like to change that culture? Any other things? I mean, you guys did a lot of team building exercises. Any other things that you might suggest? Okay.
Make everybody feel like it's their department.
Okay.
And I think one thing that I tell everybody new coming in here, I'm going to make decisions that aren't right, and I'm going to make decisions you're not going to like, and that's okay. and just realize that you're going to go out on the road. You're going to build your own narrative on things. And when it's not making sense or it makes you upset or makes you comfortable, please come back. Dave and I are open doors. There's a reason behind it that we made these decisions. And again, that might not be right. We may have to make a mistake to take 2 steps back to move 1 forward, but don't be afraid to admit your faults and be able to do that with it. And the rumor mill and the false narratives that you build on the road, I think is key to come back and talk to us about it. And I think we've been able to show that we put our fans on the same way as everybody else. And we're here to support the team, to have a good quality of life. This job, it's a beautiful company. It's an amazing company. Yeah. Brand new equipment, the best offices in the world. So there shouldn't be any time that they feel like they can't come into work. Mm-hmm. I want them to be happy if they're on a trip at 3 a.m. or if they're leaving at 3 p.m. I want them to be happy coming through the front gate. And if they're not, let's figure out how to change that.
I love that build the narrative while you're on the road. As scheduling, I'm usually in the scheduling and I can see a lot of that happening, and some of that information comes back in the form of complaints or people that are upset. But yeah, you sometimes build a narrative while you're out and about. Perhaps you don't have all of the details or the reasons why those things happened. And it is key for that individual to come back and speak with management about it.
And I think one thing that I like too about trip planning is you can go in and look at the history of a trip. Yeah. So when someone complains or starts talking about why are you doing this or why are you doing that, we should have done this, we should have done that. And you kind of go back and say, look at the history. Just in the last 24 hours, there was 75 changes.
Yeah.
And you realize how many phone calls and emails that equates to.
Yep.
To get where we're at. And yes, you're 100% right. It might not be the efficient way to do it, what we're looking at, but here's the why behind it, why we're doing it this way. And it's usually the people that have never been in the chair of a dispatcher, the thankless position, and held that phone call and got phone calls at 1 a.m. or 8 o'clock at night and all that, they're the first ones to question you. But a lot of times, if you show them the why behind it, again, they may not like it, but at least they understand.
Yeah. Yep. Very good key notes. Yeah.
I'm very, very protective of my scheduler just because I've been in that seat.
Yeah. Both you guys.
Yeah. We know how hard it is. So I do love the questions from the pilots. Mm-hmm. I love the pushback side of it, but on the same point, I let them, you sit in the seat for a month.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
It is a dynamic position. Yes.
It is. And from the outside, it should look like that they have nothing going on. Mm-hmm. It is what it should look like. It should be presidential. It should be, the crew, or not the crew, but the passengers should be none the wiser around what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
With it. And if I get complaints on that and it looks like she doesn't have anything to do, then she's doing her job.
That's great. Great tips. Great tips. Well, do you guys have any last great parting words for us? I mean, you guys worked as a team. I think that's really cool too. You have the 3 of you that came in as a team. Any notes about that?
As the 3 of us, it's been a long journey. And I think the best quality that I like between all of us is that we're very, very transparent, probably more transparent than we should be on a lot of things. But the transparency and the communication is key. Like I said earlier, they're going to build their own narrative on the road unless you get that narrative out ahead of time. And the bigger your department is, the more people you have and the more pilots that are on the road for a longer amount of time, that narrative is going to be there. And unless you can squash it with the communication, then you gotta deal with it.
Sure.
What do you got, Dave? Nothing. That's it.
That's it.
Nailed it.
That's awesome. Well, we at LD Aviation are super proud to be able to work with you guys. I agree. You guys have brought that flight department to a place where others are benchmarking against you now, just like you did at Darden. So congratulations. And that was pretty short. I mean, you guys have only been there 6 and 7 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of hard work, I'm sure.
Oh, it has been. And a little plug I got to throw in for LD Aviation. You guys have allowed us to learn the scheduling software to get in the weeds a lot more than you normally would. And I think with that, we've been able to improve it for other operators. We throw a lot of administrative stuff on you, a lot of ideas out there that we don't have really time to dig in, but would be nice. Yeah. And you guys can take it to the next level, take it to Sumant and Melissa and all them, Jason, at Trip Planning.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's made an improvement to the overall software itself.
Oh, hands down, because some of the ideas, I mean, I could just tell from some of the ideas that you guys talk about and then Lori brings up to trip planning, they implement that and then we run it through the rest of our clients and use it as well. So hands down, that's working. Yeah, it's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your time today. This has really been great talking to you. If somebody wanted to reach out and talk to you, maybe ask you some more questions about narratives or team building, where would they find you?
Steve.golden@cfacorp.com.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
Dave.Parker@cfacorp.com.
Awesome.
I'm also on LinkedIn too, but I don't know what my LinkedIn address is. But you search Stephen Golden, I'm on there.
Sounds good. I'll pop it down in the notes as well for people. So it could be a link. I'll do that one for yours as well, Dave.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate all your knowledge and sharing.
You bet, Lynn. See ya.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes and check out our website for up-and-coming podcasts. This has been a production of the Business Aviation Collective, sponsored by LD Aviation.